Every morning at 5:30, Miguel Santana parked his old blue Toyota in the same spot at the far corner of Westfield Community College's staff lot. The early September air still held a hint of summer warmth as he grabbed his thermos of coffee and walked toward the service entrance. 15 years of this same routine had worn a path in his life as predictable as the seasons. "Morning, Miguel," called Frank, the night security guard ending his shift. Frank was one of the few people who consistently acknowledged Miguel's existence. "Morning," Miguel replied with a small wave. His voice was soft, with just a trace of his Peruvian accent remaining after decades in America. Inside the janitorial closet, Miguel changed into his gray uniform, faded from countless washes but meticulously pressed. He checked his cleaning cart, making sure all supplies were stocked for the day ahead. The quiet of the empty hallways was comforting, like an old friend who asked nothing of him but his presence. As Miguel pushed his cart through the science wing, his mind wandered to the letter he'd received yesterday from his sister in Lima. His nephew Jose had been accepted to university, the first in their family to go. Miguel had been sending money home for years to help make this possible. A small smile crossed his weathered face at the thought. By 7:30, students began trickling into the building. Miguel became invisible then, a ghost in gray moving along the edges of their world. He had perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight, cleaning up spills and emptying trash bins without disrupting the flow of campus life. "Watch it." A young man with a backpack nearly collided with Miguel's cart as he rounded a corner texting on his phone. He didn't look up or apologize, just swerved around and continued walking. Miguel simply adjusted his cart and continued working. These small indignities had long ago lost their sting. During his lunch break, Miguel sat alone at the far corner of the cafeteria. He unwrapped the sandwich he'd made that morning, ham and cheese on white bread, and opened his worn paperback novel. Reading had become his escape over the years, a way to visit places he'd never see and live lives he'd never know. Today's book was about an explorer in the Amazon, reminding him of stories his grandfather had told when Miguel was a boy. "Is this seat taken?" Miguel looked up, surprised. An older woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes stood there with a lunch tray. "No, please," he said, moving his things to make room. "I'm Helen, from the accounting office," she said, sitting down. "I've seen you around for years, but I don't think we've ever properly met." "Miguel," he replied, extending his hand. "I clean the North Campus buildings." Their conversation was brief but pleasant, mostly about the unusually warm weather and the upcoming campus renovations. When Helen left, Miguel felt a small spark of something he hadn't experienced in a long time, the simple pleasure of being seen. The afternoon found Miguel mopping the floors in the music building. This was secretly his favorite assignment. As he worked, he could hear snippets of practice sessions floating through the hallways, a violin struggling through scales, a soprano working on an aria, jazz piano riffs repeating until they flowed seamlessly. He moved more slowly here, letting the sounds wash over him like gentle rain. Outside the main practice room, a poster caught his eye. "Annual spring showcase auditions begin next week." Miguel paused, his mop suspended mid-stroke as memories flooded back without warning. He was suddenly 18 again, sitting at the grand piano in Lima's National Conservatory, the weight of opportunity and expectation on his shoulders. His father had worked double shifts as a bus driver for years to pay for his lessons. "Music is your ticket to a better life," his father had told him repeatedly. And Miguel had been on his way, recognized as one of the most promising pianists of his generation in Peru. Then came the political upheaval, the economic collapse, the desperate decision to seek safety and opportunity in America. Miguel had arrived with little money and less English, his dreams of concert halls replaced by the immediate need for survival. A piano note, a single perfect G, pulled him back to the present. Miguel realized he had been standing motionless for several minutes, lost in the past. He quickly resumed mopping, his calloused hands gripping the handle tightly. Those hands told the story of his life now. Once they had been protected, moisturized, the nails carefully maintained, a pianist's most valuable tools. Now they were rough and chapped from cleaning chemicals with short, practical nails and a small scar across his right palm from a broken glass he'd cleaned up 3 years ago. As evening approached, Miguel made his final rounds, checking bathrooms and classrooms for any missed trash or spills. In the empty recital hall, he paused to straighten the chairs and pick up discarded programs from the floor. The grand piano stood silently at the center of the stage, its polished black surface reflecting the dim safety lights. Miguel glanced around to confirm he was alone, then climbed the steps to the stage. He approached the piano reverently, not daring to touch it but standing close enough to feel its presence. He hadn't touched a piano in nearly 5 years, not since Mrs. Peterson had passed away. The elderly woman had lived in Miguel's apartment building and had owned a small upright piano. After discovering Miguel's background, she had invited him to play whenever he wanted. Those stolen hours of music had been his only connection to his former self. With a deep sigh, Miguel turned away from the piano and went back to his cart. Some dreams were best left in the past. He had a different life now, a simple life, but one with its own quiet dignity. He sent money home to his family, paid his bills on time, and had recently started saving for a used car for his daughter, who was finishing community college while working at a local diner. As Miguel walked to his car that evening, the setting sun painted the campus buildings in warm golden light. A young couple sat on a bench near the fountain, laughing together. A professor hurried past with an armful of books. A group of students tossed a frisbee on the lawn. Life continued all around him, lives that intersected with his only in the most superficial ways. At home, Miguel's small apartment welcomed him with familiar silence. He watered the potted herbs on his kitchen windowsill, basil, cilantro, and mint, a small green connection to the lush gardens of his childhood home. After a simple dinner, he called his daughter Lisa to check in. "How's school going, mija?" he asked, settling into his worn armchair. "Good, Papa. I got an A on my business management paper," Lisa replied, pride evident in her voice. "That's wonderful. You're so smart, just like your mother was." They talked for 20 minutes about her classes, her roommate troubles, and her upcoming job interview. Miguel listened attentively, offering encouragement and advice when asked. Lisa was the center of his world, the one bright light that had guided him through the dark years after her mother's death from cancer, when Lisa was only 12. After hanging up, Miguel prepared for bed. Tomorrow would be the same as today, another day of invisible work, of existing on the periphery of the bustling college campus. But as he set his alarm for 5 a.m., he didn't feel resentment for the life he led. Instead, he felt a quiet gratitude for what he had: his health, his daughter's success, and the knowledge that his work, however unnoticed, made a difference in small ways. As sleep began to claim him, Miguel's fingers twitched slightly, unconsciously playing the opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, a piece he had once performed to thunderous applause in a concert hall in Lima. In his dreams, Miguel still played, his music soaring above the life he now lived, connecting the man he had been with the man he had become. The Spring Music Showcase was Westfield Community College's biggest cultural event of the year. For weeks, the campus buzzed with rehearsals, auditions, and nervous energy as students prepared to perform. The music building, usually a place of focused practice and quiet concentration, now overflowed with excited voices and the chaotic blend of instruments tuning up simultaneously. For Miguel, it meant longer hours and more messes to clean. He didn't mind the extra work. The excitement in the air reminded him of concerts from his past life, bringing both sweet and painful memories. As he emptied overflowing trash bins filled with crumpled sheet music and coffee cups, he hummed softly to himself, matching the melody drifting from a nearby practice room. "Mr. Santana, would you mind tackling the recital hall next? They've just finished the dress rehearsal, and there's confetti everywhere," said Mrs. Garcia, the facilities supervisor, poking her head into the hallway where Miguel was working. "Of course, right away," Miguel nodded, gathering his supplies. The recital hall was indeed a mess. The dress rehearsal had included the finale where biodegradable confetti rained down on the performers. Now the colorful paper bits were everywhere, stuck to seats scattered across the stage and hiding in corners. Miguel started with the push broom, gathering the larger piles before switching to the vacuum for the more stubborn pieces. As he worked, a piano student named Tyler remained on stage, practicing furiously, his fingers flying over a difficult passage from Liszt. Miguel worked quietly around him, careful not to disturb the young man's concentration. When Tyler finally packed up his music and left, Miguel found himself alone in the hall. The stage lights were still on, illuminating the grand piano in a warm glow that made the polished ebony surface gleam like black water. Miguel finished vacuuming the last row of seats, then stood for a moment, looking at the piano. Almost without realizing what he was doing, he set down his cleaning tools and walked slowly toward the stage. The hall was empty. Nobody would know. Just a few minutes, he told himself as he approached the piano. His heart pounded as he carefully sat on the bench, adjusting it to the right height from muscle memory. His hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. It had been so long. He pressed a single key, middle C, and the clear tone resonated through the empty hall. The sound was so pure, so perfect that tears sprang to his eyes. His fingers found their positions naturally, and he began to play a simple Bach prelude, one of the first pieces he had mastered as a child. The music flowed from him like water breaking through a dam. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget: the proper posture, the precise pressure needed for each note, the subtle pedal work that brought the piece to life. For 5 precious minutes, Miguel Santana was not a janitor but a musician again, his soul speaking through his fingertips. He was so lost in the music that he didn't hear the door open at the back of the hall. "Excuse me, the piano is not for janitorial staff." The sharp voice cut through the music like a knife. Miguel's hands jerked away from the keys as if burned. He stood up quickly, nearly knocking over the bench. "I'm sorry. Professor Chen, I shouldn't have," Miguel stammered, his face burning with shame. The music professor stood in the center aisle, arms crossed. "That piano is an expensive instrument for student use only. Please continue with your cleaning duties." Miguel nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "Yes, of course. I apologize." As he hurried back to his cleaning cart, he felt the familiar shrinking sensation, his shoulders hunching, his eyes lowering, his presence diminishing until he was once again just the invisible man who cleaned up after others. The next evening was the reception following the showcase performance. The lobby of the Performing Arts Building had been transformed with twinkling lights, elegant refreshment tables, and displays featuring photos of the music department's accomplished alumni. Students in formal attire mingled with proud parents, faculty members, and a few local reporters covering the event. Miguel and 2 other maintenance workers had been asked to stay on duty during the reception to deal with any spills or issues that might arise. They wore their regular gray uniforms but had been given black bow ties to wear, as a nod to the formal nature of the event. The addition made Miguel feel even more out of place, like a poorly disguised intruder in this world of music and celebration. "Hey, can we get some more ice at the west table?" called a student volunteer, barely glancing at Miguel as she rushed past with an empty tray. Miguel nodded and headed to the kitchen area to fetch more ice. As he carried the heavy bucket through the crowd, people automatically moved aside without really seeing him. He was just part of the background, like the potted plants or the coat rack. He had almost reached the refreshment table when someone bumped into him from behind, causing him to stumble. Some of the ice spilled onto the polished floor, near the grand piano that had been placed in the lobby for ambiance. "Sorry about that," muttered a young man in a tuxedo before continuing his conversation. Without missing a beat, Miguel set down the ice bucket and quickly grabbed a towel from his cart to mop up the spill before someone slipped. As he knelt on the floor, dabbing at the wet spots, he became aware of voices nearby, a group of music, students watching him with amused expressions. "That's him, the janitor who was playing the piano." "Yesterday," one whispered loudly enough for Miguel to hear. Professor Chen caught him and totally shut him down. Miguel kept his eyes on the floor, his movements becoming smaller as he tried to make himself less noticeable. "No way," another student laughed. "Probably just picking out chopsticks with one finger." A third student, Jason, leaned against the piano with a smirk. He was tall and confident, with the easy manner of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. "Hey, I've got an idea," he said, his voice carrying clearly to where Miguel was working. The other students gathered closer, sensing entertainment. "Hey there," Jason called out. Miguel looked up reluctantly, knowing he was being addressed but wishing he could disappear. "Yes, you, the piano man." A few people nearby turned to watch the interaction, curious about the commotion. "Why don't you play something for us?" Jason gestured grandly toward the piano. "Show us your hidden talents." The students around him snickered. A girl with long blonde hair covered her mouth to hide her laughter. "Yeah, give us a performance," she added. Miguel's face grew hot. He stood slowly, the wet towel clutched in his hand. "I should get back to work," he said quietly. "Oh, come on," Jason persisted, his voice growing louder. "Don't be shy. We'd love to hear what our maintenance staff can do." He looked around at the growing audience, clearly enjoying the attention. Wouldn't we all? More people had stopped to watch now. Students, parents, even a few faculty members. Some looked uncomfortable with the situation, while others seemed merely curious or amused. "I really need to finish cleaning up this spill," Miguel said, his voice barely audible over the buzz of conversation in the lobby. "It's just a little water," Jason said dismissively. "This is more important. Musical education." He turned to address the crowd more directly. "Our friend here apparently likes to sneak in some piano practice between mopping floors." Miguel stood frozen, the familiar feeling of shame washing over him. In this moment, he was no longer the 58-year-old man who had lived through revolution, immigration, and reinvention. He was again the poor boy from the outskirts of Lima, being told by his first piano teacher that people like him would never play in concert halls, no matter how talented they might be. "Come on," called another student, Thomas, emboldened by Jason's lead. "Just one song." "Unless you're scared." The challenge hung in the air. Miguel looked around at the faces watching him, some cruelly amused, some indifferent, a few showing discomfort or sympathy. Near the back of the crowd, he spotted Dr. Winters, the head of the music department, observing with a frown. Miguel felt a curious calm settle over him. These young people thought they were being clever, making fun of the old janitor with delusions of grandeur. They expected him to embarrass himself, to plunk awkwardly at the keys, providing them with a story they would laugh about for weeks. But music had been his first language, long before English. It had been his companion through the darkest times of his life. Even when he couldn't play, the music had continued inside him, like an underground river flowing beneath the surface of his quiet existence. "Well?" Jason prompted, raising an eyebrow. "What's it going to be? Are you going to play for us or not?" The lobby had grown quieter as more people tuned into the drama unfolding. Miguel looked down at his hands, calloused, rough, stained from years of labor. Once, those same hands had moved audiences to tears. He carefully placed the wet towel in the bucket with the remaining ice. Then he straightened his back, lifted his chin, and walked toward the piano. The polished black piano loomed before Miguel like a mountain he once knew how to climb. As he approached it, the murmurs of the crowd faded into background noise. Time seemed to slow down. Every step toward the instrument felt like walking through deep water, difficult yet somehow pulling him forward. Jason's smirk widened as Miguel drew closer to the piano. The student leaned toward his friends, whispering something that made them snicker. A phone camera flashed as someone prepared to capture what they assumed would be an embarrassing moment to share online later. Miguel stood beside the piano now, his fingers lightly touching its curved edge. The smooth, cool surface brought back a flood of memories. His first recital at age 7, his scholarship audition at the conservatory, the last concert he gave in Lima before fleeing the country. In each memory, he felt the same mixture of fear and exhilaration that now tightened his chest. "Any day now," called Thomas with exaggerated patience, checking his watch. A ripple of laughter spread through the onlookers. Miguel looked down at his uniform, the faded gray fabric, the small coffee stain on the sleeve, the bow tie that seemed to mock his current position in life. For a brief, terrible moment, he considered walking away, back to his cleaning cart and the safety of invisibility. What right did he have to sit at this gleaming instrument, to pretend he belonged in this world of music and art? He was just the janitor, the man who emptied trash cans and mopped floors. But then his eyes caught sight of a young girl standing with her mother near the front of the crowd. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, clutching a music folder to her chest, probably one of the younger students who had performed in the showcase. She wasn't laughing or smirking like the older students. Instead, she watched him with simple curiosity, waiting to see what would happen next. Something in her expression reminded Miguel of his daughter Lisa when she was that age, before she learned to be embarrassed by her father's accent and his humble job, before she understood the difference between their life and the lives of her classmates whose parents were doctors and lawyers and business owners. Miguel straightened his shoulders. Perhaps he no longer belonged to the world of concert halls and standing ovations. Perhaps his hands were no longer as nimble as they once had been, but the music had never left him. It lived in his heart, in his bones, in the rhythmic movements of his daily work. He sat down at the piano bench and adjusted it slightly, a habit from long ago. His movements were precise, professional, already a departure from what the crowd expected. A small furrow appeared between Jason's eyebrows as he noticed this unexpected confidence. Miguel placed his hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath his weathered fingertips. He closed his eyes for a moment, drawing a deep breath. The lobby had grown surprisingly quiet. Even the clink of glasses at the refreshment table had stopped as everyone waited to see what would happen. What should he play? His mind raced through possibilities. Something simple and popular to surprise them, a classical piece to demonstrate technique. Then from some deep place within him the answer came. He would play the piece that had changed his life, the one his father had saved for months to buy the sheet music for, the one that had won him his scholarship, the one that expressed everything he had ever felt but couldn't put into words. Miguel opened his eyes and began to play Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. The opening notes hung in the air like a question, tentative, searching. A few of the students exchanged glances, surprised by the technical accuracy of these first measures. But Miguel was no longer aware of them. The music had already begun to carry him away, back to a time when his hands remembered every note, every nuance of this complex piece. The introduction gave way to the main theme, a haunting melody that floated above a restless left-hand pattern. Miguel's body began to move with the music, leaning into phrases, pulling back at moments of tension. His face, usually guarded and expressionless, transformed as the emotional narrative of the piece unfolded. In the crowd, confusion gave way to amazement. Jason's smug smile faded, replaced by an open-mouthed stare. The phones that had been raised to record an embarrassing moment now captured something entirely different, something magical and unexpected. As the piece progressed, growing more complex and demanding, Miguel's technique revealed itself fully. His hands flew across the keyboard with precision and control that spoke of years of serious training. Difficult passages that would challenge even advanced students flowed from his fingers with apparent ease. Yet it wasn't just his technical skill that captivated the audience. It was the depth of feeling in his playing. The ballade told a story of hope and despair, of struggle and fleeting joy, of memories that both comfort and wound. As Miguel played, his own story seemed to pour into the music. The young boy practicing by candlelight when electricity was scarce. The teenager performing in shopping malls to help his family make ends meet. The young man who once believed music would be his salvation. The immigrant who packed away his dreams along with his concert clothes when survival became the only priority. Halfway through the piece, Miguel reached a moment of relative calm, a lyrical section that offered brief respite before the gathering storm of notes to come. His shoulders relaxed slightly, and he dared to look up at the audience for the first time since beginning to play. What he saw made his heart skip, complete stillness. Every face turned toward him in rapt attention. Even the servers who had been circulating with trays of drinks had stopped to listen. In the back of the room, Dr. Winters, the music department head, stood with her hand pressed to her heart, her eyes wide with astonishment. The young girl Miguel had noticed earlier watched him with parted lips and shining eyes, witnessing something that would stay with her forever, the moment when appearances shattered and truth revealed itself through music. Miguel returned his focus to the piano, diving into the increasingly turbulent final sections of the piece. The music grew more passionate, more technically demanding. Rapid scales, complex chord progressions, and delicate ornamentations flowed from his fingers as if he had never stopped playing, never spent 15 years cleaning floors instead of touching piano keys. His body remembered. His heart remembered. And now his hands remembered too. When he reached the coda, the whirlwind finale that rushes toward its dramatic conclusion, Miguel was no longer in the college lobby. He was everywhere he had ever been. His childhood home in Peru, the practice rooms of the conservatory, his first tiny apartment in America, the hospital room where he had held his wife's hand for the last time. The music contained all of it. Every joy, every loss, every quiet victory and bitter disappointment. The final chords resounded through the space, powerful and resolute. Then silence. Miguel's hands remained poised above the keys for a moment, then slowly came to rest in his lap. He kept his eyes closed, suddenly afraid to look up. The magical bubble created by the music would burst the moment he faced reality again. He would go back to being just the janitor, the invisible man with the mop and bucket. But the silence stretched on for several more seconds, so complete that Miguel could hear his own heartbeat. Then someone gasped as if remembering to breathe. And then applause. Not polite, awkward applause, but a thunderous outpouring of genuine appreciation that exploded throughout the lobby. People were standing, clapping vigorously, some wiping tears from their eyes. "Bravo!" called an older gentleman near the refreshment table. "Incredible!" shouted someone else. Miguel opened his eyes, blinking in confusion at the standing ovation before him. Jason and his friends stood stunned, their earlier mockery transformed into disbelief. The young girl who had reminded him of Lisa was jumping up and down, tugging at her mother's sleeve and pointing excitedly at Miguel. Dr. Winters was making her way through the crowd toward the piano, her face alight with a mixture of bewilderment and delight. Miguel slowly rose from the bench on unsteady legs. He felt both drained and strangely energized, as if he had rediscovered a part of himself long buried. He smoothed down his uniform and adjusted his bow tie, unsure what to do next. Should he bow? Should he say something? Should he simply return to his cleaning duties as if nothing extraordinary had happened? Before he could decide, Dr. Winters reached him, extending her hand. "Mr. Santana," she said, her voice filled with genuine respect. I'm at a loss for words. Where did you study? Who was your teacher?" Miguel swallowed hard, finding his voice. "National Conservatory of Music in Lima, Peru. I studied with Maestro Fuentes." Dr. Winters' eyes widened. "Eduardo Fuentes? He's a legend." More people gathered around now, asking questions, offering congratulations, wanting to know his story. The same people who had looked through him for years now really saw him for the first time. In the corner, Miguel noticed Jason standing awkwardly with his friends, their earlier confidence deflated. The young man caught Miguel's eye and had the grace to look ashamed. After a moment's hesitation, Jason stepped forward, pushing through the crowd until he stood before Miguel. "Sir," he said, his voice quieter than before, "I owe you an apology. I was being a jerk. I had no idea." He trailed off, genuinely at a loss for words. Miguel looked at the young man, talented, privileged, and now humbled. He remembered being young and arrogant himself before life taught him harder lessons. "Music," Miguel said gently. "It doesn't care who you are or what you do for living. It only cares what's in your heart when you play." Jason nodded slowly, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. As the questions continued and the crowd pressed closer, Miguel felt something shift inside him, like a door long shut was creaking open, letting in light and air and possibilities he had thought were gone forever. The morning after the showcase, Miguel arrived at work to find things had changed. The campus felt different, or perhaps it was Miguel himself who had changed. As he unlocked the supply closet and prepared his cleaning cart, the usual weight of invisibility had lifted from his shoulders. He stood straighter, moved with more confidence, as if last night's performance had realigned something essential within him. "There he is," a voice called out as Miguel pushed his cart into the main hallway. Two students from the music department approached, smiling broadly. "Mr. Santana, right? You were amazing last night." Miguel nodded shyly, unused to being the center of attention. "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it." "Enjoyed it? You blew everyone away. People are still talking about it." The student held out his phone, showing Miguel a video. "Look, someone posted your performance online. It already has over 2,000 views." Miguel peered at the small screen, seeing himself transformed at the piano. The video showed his hands dancing across the keys, his face lost in the music. It was strange to see himself this way, not as the quiet janitor, but as the musician he had once been. The musician he still was, somewhere deep inside. "I have to finish my rounds," Miguel said, gesturing to his cart. "But thank you for showing me." As he continued his work, more people stopped him. Students, faculty, even administrative staff who had heard about the performance secondhand. Each conversation made the previous night more real, less like a dream that would fade with morning light. By lunchtime, Miguel's phone buzzed with a text from his daughter Lisa. "Dad, why didn't you tell me you played last night? Someone from my chemistry class showed me the video. You're all over social media. Call me. Miguel sat on a bench outside the science building, hands trembling slightly as he dialed her number. Papa. Lisa's voice burst through the speaker, excited and confused. That was you playing Chopin? Like really playing? Like a concert pianist? Yes, Mia, he said softly. That was me. But how? When? I mean, I knew you played a little, but this is professional level. Why didn't you ever tell me? Miguel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of all he had never shared with his daughter. How could he explain the choices he had made, the dreams he had set aside, the parts of himself he had locked away to survive? It's a long story, he said. One I should have told you long ago. Can we talk tonight when I get home? I'm driving over right now, Lisa replied firmly. I'm skipping my afternoon class. This is more important. After finishing lunch, Miguel was heading back to work when he spotted Dr. Winters walking purposefully toward him. The music department head had been kind but brief last night, asking him to come to her office today. Miguel had assumed she wanted to reprimand him for playing the piano without permission, despite the audience's reaction. Mr. Santana, she called, waving him over. I'm glad I caught you. Do you have a moment to talk now? In my office? Miguel nodded, his stomach tightening with anxiety. Of course, Dr. Winters. Her office was warm and cluttered with stacks of music, framed concert programs, and photos of Dr. Winters with various orchestras and musicians. She gestured for him to sit in the chair across from her desk. I've been doing some research this morning, she said without preamble. Miguel Santana, graduated with highest honors from Lima's National Conservatory in 1990. Winner of the South American Young Pianist competition the same year. Scheduled to begin an international tour in 1991, but disappeared from the music scene just before the first concert. She looked up from her computer screen. That's you, isn't it? Miguel nodded slowly. Yes. May I ask what happened? A talent like yours, to just vanish. Miguel's hands rested in his lap, the calluses and small scars visible under the office lights. How to explain the fear, the desperation, the impossible choices? It was a difficult time in Peru, he began. Political violence, economic collapse. My father was killed in a bombing. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. My mother and sisters were struggling. Then I received threats because I had spoken at a student rally for peace. He paused, the memories still painful after all these years. I had to leave quickly. I came to America with almost nothing. By the time I was settled, had legal status, my mother had died, and music. He spread his hands in a helpless gesture. Music became a luxury I couldn't afford. Dr. Winters' expression softened. And all these years at Westfield? 15 years working just steps away from our music department, our practice rooms, our pianos? Miguel looked down. At first I needed the steady job, the health insurance for my daughter. Later it became comfortable, safe. He met Dr. Winters' gaze, and painful too, hearing the music every day but not being part of it. Until last night, Dr. Winters said. Until last night, Miguel agreed. Dr. Winters leaned forward. Mr. Santana, Miguel, what those students did was unacceptable. Their attempt to humiliate you was cruel and completely contrary to the values of our department. They will face consequences. Her expression changed, becoming thoughtful. But their cruelty led to something extraordinary, a reminder that talent and artistry can survive even when buried for years. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the campus for a moment before turning back to him. I have a proposal for you. Our piano instructor for beginners is leaving at the end of this semester. Would you consider taking the position? It's part-time to start, but it includes access to our practice facilities. Miguel stared at her, certain he had misheard. You want me to teach? But I don't have a teaching certificate or... You have something more valuable, Dr. Winters interrupted. Extraordinary talent, professional training, and life experience our students desperately need to understand. The paperwork we can figure out. She smiled. I heard you speaking with that young man, Jason, last night. Music doesn't care what you do for a living. That's exactly the perspective our students need. Miguel's heart raced. To teach music, to play regularly again, to reclaim that piece of his identity after so many years. It seemed impossible, like something from a dream. I don't know what to say, he stammered. Say you'll think about it, Dr. Winters replied gently. Talk to your daughter. Consider what you want the next chapter of your life to look like. When Miguel left her office, The hallway seemed brighter somehow. The sounds of students practicing in nearby rooms no longer a reminder of what he had lost, but possibly a preview of what might come next. He found Lisa waiting for him near the maintenance office, pacing anxiously. When she saw him, she ran forward, throwing her arms around him in a fierce hug. "Dad, I saw the video. Why didn't you ever tell me you could play like that? All these years, no." Miguel held his daughter tightly, feeling a lifetime of explanations waiting to be shared. "Let's walk," he said. "I have so much to tell you." They walked slowly across campus, Miguel speaking more than he had in years, sharing the story of his early life in Peru, his musical education, the dreams he once had, and the choices he had made for their survival. "I was going to be a concert pianist," he explained. "My first international tour was scheduled, contracts signed. But then your grandfather was killed and the threats came and I had to leave everything behind." Lisa listened, wide-eyed. "But why didn't you try again once we were settled here? Once things were stable?" Miguel sighed. "When your mother got sick, all that mattered was taking care of both of you. After she died," his voice caught, "after she died, all that mattered was you. Making sure you had opportunities, stability, the kind of life I couldn't have." "But you gave up your passion," Lisa said, her eyes filling with tears. "You gave up who you were." Miguel stopped walking and turned to his daughter. "No, mija. I changed, yes. Life changed me. But last night I realized the music was still there. It was always there." He touched his heart. "Just waiting." They reached the recital hall, now empty and quiet after last night's festivities. Through the windows, Miguel could see the grand piano on stage, bathed in a shaft of afternoon sunlight. "Dr. Winters offered me a teaching position," he said quietly. "Teaching piano to beginners." Lisa's eyes widened. "Dad, that's amazing. You have to take it." "It would be a big change. Less money, at least at first. I'd have to study, prepare, get certifications eventually." "So what?" Lisa countered. "We'll figure it out. I'm almost done with school. I can help more." She squeezed his arm. "Dad, I've never seen you like you were in that video. It was like meeting a whole different person. Someone so alive, so complete." Miguel looked at his daughter, strong, determined, so much like her mother, and felt a surge of love and pride. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," she said, smiling through tears, "even if he kept his best lessons hidden." They stood together, looking at the piano through the window, its presence no longer a reminder of loss but a symbol of unexpected second chances. "Play for me," Lisa said suddenly. "Not a video, not a performance for others. Just for me. I want to see my father play." Miguel hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yes, it's time you knew all of me." As they entered the empty recital hall, Miguel felt like he was walking into a new life, one where the janitor and the pianist could finally exist as one person, whole and undivided. He sat at the bench, his daughter beside him, and began to play. 6 weeks after the showcase performance that changed everything, Miguel stood nervously outside classroom 103 in the music building. Through the small window in the door, he could see 8 students waiting, their faces a mixture of curiosity and impatience. His first class as the new beginner piano instructor at Westfield Community College was about to start. Miguel straightened his navy blue blazer, a gift from Lisa for his new job, and took a deep breath. The past month and a half had been a whirlwind of paperwork, preparation, and practice. Dr. Winters had helped navigate the administrative hurdles of his unusual hiring, arguing passionately that his professional experience and exceptional talent outweighed his lack of formal teaching credentials. The board had agreed to a probationary position with the understanding that Miguel would work toward certification. The hallway still smelled of floor polish, a familiar scent from his years of maintenance work. Just yesterday, he had nodded hello to Frank, who had taken over his old cleaning route. The transition felt surreal, walking these same corridors but with a completely different purpose, being greeted by name by people who had previously looked through him. "You've got this, Mr. Santana," said a voice behind him. Miguel turned to see Dr. Winters approaching with an encouraging smile. "Just be yourself. Share your love of music. The rest will follow." Miguel nodded gratefully. "Thank you. For everything. Thank yourself," she replied. "You're the one who had the courage to sit down at that piano." As Dr. Winters continued down the hall, Miguel squared his shoulders and opened the classroom door. 8 pairs of eyes turned toward him, 4 college students and 4 community members, ranging in age from 19 to 72. According to the roster he'd memorized. "Good morning," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I am Miguel Santana, your piano instructor." A young woman in the front row raised her hand immediately. "Are you really the janitor from that viral video? The one who played Chopin?" Miguel smiled. The video of his performance had indeed gone viral, reaching far beyond the college community. Local news stations had picked up the story, and just last week a classical music magazine had contacted him for an interview. The attention was overwhelming, but also healing in a way he hadn't expected. "Yes, that was me," he acknowledged. "But today I'm your teacher. And you are all musicians, beginners perhaps, but still musicians. That is how I will see you, and how I hope you will begin to see yourselves." By the end of that first class, Miguel's nervousness had melted away. Teaching came naturally to him. The patience he had developed during years of careful, methodical cleaning work translated well to instructing beginners. He could see the small improvements, the tiny successes that others might miss, and knew how to encourage progress without causing frustration. As the weeks passed, word spread about the piano janitor turned professor, and his classes quickly filled to capacity. Students described his teaching style as kind but demanding, technical yet deeply expressive. What set him apart, they said, was his ability to connect the mechanics of playing with the emotional heart of music. "Your fingers can learn all the right notes," he often told his students. "But it's your heart that will make those notes matter to someone who listens." 3 months into his new position, Miguel received a surprise visit from Jason, the student whose cruel dare had unintentionally changed the course of his life. The young man stood awkwardly in the doorway of Miguel's small office after his afternoon class. "Mr. Santana," Jason began, his usual confidence noticeably absent. "I was wondering if I could talk to you for a minute." Miguel gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Of course." "Please sit down." Jason sat, fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. "I wanted to apologize again properly this time. What I did at the showcase reception it was awful. I was showing off, trying to be funny at someone else's expense." He looked directly at Miguel. "I'm really sorry." "Apology accepted," Miguel said simply. "We all make mistakes, especially when we're young." "That's just it," Jason continued. "It wasn't just a mistake. It showed something ugly about who I was becoming." He paused. "After that night, I did a lot of thinking. About privilege, about respect, about a lot of things." Miguel nodded, seeing the genuine struggle in the young man's eyes. "Anyway," Jason said, "I've been working on a community project. We're starting music lessons for kids at the community center in Riverside. You know, the low-income neighborhood across town. Most of these kids would never have access to music education otherwise." He took a deep breath. "I was hoping you might consider coming to give a masterclass sometime. Your story. I think it would mean a lot to them." Miguel felt a rush of emotion at the unexpected request. "I would be honored," he said quietly. As Jason left, Miguel sat at his desk, contemplating how life could change in such unexpected ways. From janitor to instructor, from invisible to respected, from silent to heard, and now perhaps from student to mentor. That evening, as Miguel practiced in one of the college's small rehearsal rooms, his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Check your email." "Big news!" Miguel opened his email to find a message from the director of the city's annual Summer Arts Festival. They had seen the video of his performance and were inviting him to be a featured performer at the upcoming festival, his first professional engagement in over 30 years. His hands trembled as he called Lisa. "Did you see it?" "Did you see it?" she exclaimed as soon as she answered. "Dad, this is huge." "A real concert. Are you going to do it?" I don't know," he admitted, the old fears rising. "It's been so long since I performed professionally. My repertoire is limited now, my technique isn't what it was." "Stop," Lisa interrupted firmly. "You've been practicing every day. Dr. Winters says your playing is exceptional. This is your chance to reclaim something that was taken from you." Her voice softened. "Mom would have wanted this for you." The mention of his late wife sent a pang through Miguel's heart. Anna had loved his music, had encouraged him even during their hardest times to keep playing, if only for himself. What would she think of this unexpected turn in his life? "I'll think about it," he promised. 2 days later, Miguel found himself in Dr. Winter's office discussing the festival invitation. "You should absolutely accept," Dr. Winter said without hesitation. "In fact, I think we should host a preparatory recital here at the college. It would be wonderful for our students to see you in performance, and it would help you get comfortable with an audience again." "What if I'm not ready?" Miguel asked, voicing his deepest fear. "What if I disappoint everyone?" Dr. Winters considered him thoughtfully. "Miguel, do you remember what you told me about your father when we first talked about your background in Peru?" Miguel nodded. His father had worked 2 jobs to pay for his piano lessons, believing in his son's talent even when others didn't. "You said he told you that music wasn't just about playing the right notes, it was about having something to say through those notes." Dr. Winters leaned forward. "After everything you've lived through, don't you think you have something worthwhile to say?" The question lingered with Miguel as he walked home that evening, the spring air filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Did he have something to say through his music? Something that his unique journey, from promising young pianist to struggling immigrant to janitor to teacher, had given him? The answer came to him as he watched a mother and child walking ahead of him on the sidewalk, the little boy hopping from crack to crack while his mother patiently adjusted her pace to his game. Life was like that, adjusting, persisting, finding joy in unexpected places, building something new from what remained after loss. Yes, he had something to say. The following Monday, Miguel posted a notice on the music department bulletin board. "Piano recital, Miguel Santana. Works by Chopin, Bach, and Schubert. Friday 7 p.m. recital hall." The night of the recital arrived with surprising speed. Peering through the curtains, Miguel saw not only his students but also many of his former maintenance colleagues, several professors, and even the college president. Lisa sat in the front row next to Dr. Winters, practically bouncing with excitement. As Miguel took his place at the piano, the audience fell silent. He looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some strangers, all waiting to hear what he had to offer. For a brief, terrifying moment, he thought he couldn't do it. Then he caught Lisa's eye. She smiled and gave him a thumbs up, mouthing, "Go, Dad." Miguel began to play. The Bach prelude flowed from his fingers like a river finding its natural course. As he moved through his program, each piece told part of his story. The technical brilliance of youth in the Bach, the deep emotional currents of middle age in the Schubert, the resilience and rebirth in the Chopin. When the final notes of the last piece faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the applause began, warm, enthusiastic, genuine. Miguel stood and bowed, tears pricking at his eyes as the audience rose to their feet. Later, at the small reception in the lobby, students and colleagues gathered around him, offering congratulations and asking questions about his journey. One elderly woman clutched his hand and said with tears in her eyes, "Your playing helped me feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel." As the crowd thinned, Miguel found himself standing next to the same piano where, just 6 months earlier, a cruel joke had unexpectedly opened the door to a new chapter in his life. He ran his fingers lightly over the polished surface, remembering the fear and shame he had felt that night, followed by the liberating power of reconnecting with his true self. "Penny for your thoughts," said Lisa, appearing at his side with 2 glasses of punch. Miguel smiled at his daughter. "I was just thinking about how strange life is, how one moment can change everything." "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked softly. "With all these changes?" Miguel considered the question. His new job paid less than his maintenance position had. His future was less certain. The path ahead would require hard work, continuous practice, study for his teaching credentials, and the courage to keep putting himself and his music out into the world. But for the first time in decades, he felt whole. The man who mopped floors and the man who played Chopin were no longer separate selves but integrated parts of one complete life. "Yes," he said, squeezing his daughter's hand, "I am happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm finally playing my own song again. All of it, even the difficult parts." As they walked out into the cool evening air, Miguel looked up at the stars. He thought of his father, who had sacrificed so much for his son's musical education. He thought of Anna, who had loved him through hardship and joy. He thought of all the twists and turns that had brought him to this moment. One cruel joke, one moment of courage, one chance to reclaim a dream. Sometimes, Miguel reflected, life's most beautiful melodies emerge from its most unexpected notes.